one of the first sessions that we have in the inaugural day. So it is pretty high in the priority, and it is for a reason. As we all know, I mean, nobody would know it better than the distinguished audience here, that we have placed a very, very healthy order of aircraft in the global OEMs. It is also a fact that we are a growing aviation sector. The domestic sector is already the third largest in the world. And the international flights, if they are included, we are the fifth largest. But we are very optimistic that we will be the third largest in that also. The overall kitty is expanding, and India's share in that kitty is expanding at a higher pace. Now, it is also a fact that aircraft leasing is a very capital intensive business, and globally the leasing constitutes around 50% of the total aircraft fleet. But in India, the proportion is much higher. We are doing 85%. So I believe that India should also have a share in the proceeds of leasing, and we should have an equal say in whatever is being contributed by us, at least, if not beyond that. So towards that end, we have taken various steps. I'm aware that there will still be demands. We have taken a lot of steps on the fiscal side. The tax regime has been liberalized, and I have it on authority, Mr. Dipesh Shah is here, that we compete with the best regimes in the world. But having said that, there's always scope for improvement. I'm aware that you would have some issues about some more things that need to be done. Maybe some at the state level, that the stamp duty is going to come to an end. The stamp duty waiver is going to come to an end in 2030. It stands to reason that you would want that to be extended. Then there is this issue of withholding tax on non-residents. The sunset clauses, you want that time to be extended. The corporate tax rate would be relatively high as compared to the domestic regime, and the general exposure to GAR. I mean, that is a perception issue probably, but that is an issue. We need to address that. But still, there are other dimensions to it. When we want something to grow, we can not just look from the tax perspective. We have to look at the other perspectives also. So we need to look at the entire ecosystem. The biggest, I would say, the gap in this whole picture that we are trying to paint is probably the financing. Where do we get the financing from? Now, the financing would have various dimensions. First of all, we'll need the banking regulations to allow the domestic banks to leverage their domestic balance sheets for financing the aircraft. There is a demand that the aircraft should be brought into the harmonized list of infrastructure subsectors. This is work in progress. We've taken it up with the Ministry of Finance. And we are keeping our fingers crossed. We are as interested in it as you are, that they should come about sooner rather than later. And finally, I think this is a great opportunity for all of us, with all the captains of industry and the financiers and bankers and lawyers and who's who, the OEMs. I think we around this table have the best brains who can put together the next 30, 35, 40 minutes that we have for the initial thoughts, and then probably we can open up for question answers. But I think I'll leave all that in the able hands of Mr. Sundarmurthy. You can take it forward from here. I'll be a very avid and a very enthusiastic listener. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you very much, Chairman Sahab, Mr. Piyush Srivastav. I think we're running behind schedule already, which is, I think, not a surprise given all the logistics involved. Firstly, I would like to thank FICCI for having chosen me for this very privileged role of moderating this panel, a subject of great interest and importance, as all of you know. My name is Vasudevan Sundaramurthy. I represent ICF Consulting. I'm a senior director and the head of aviation for their APAC business. Now, just to do justice to all the panelists, first of all, and also to the audience which have come up, I think, in fairly large numbers today, and I'm sure we'll have more people rolling in. I just want to make sure that we are able to run this as a very sharp discussion. How much time would we have? About an hour? 1 hour, right? So I know it seems a lot, but like as you will see as we progress through the discussions, I think we will always be found short on time. But I do want to make sure that we allow about 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A as well. So we stop at 12 noon, which is less than an hour, because we have another very important forum which starts at 12. Okay, and I'm sure that some of you will be there in the CEO forum as well. Anyways, without much ado, I just wanted to set a quick context and then introduce very briefly all the panelists who managed to come here. You must be aware that there is this Dublin conference happening in parallel, and some of them are stuck there for various reasons. We were expecting a few more to make that trip, but I do see that some of them are not here. But that, notwithstanding that, I think we have some wonderful panelists as part of this gathering. So let me just quickly highlight 2 or 3 things. Mr. Srivastav had already set the context in terms of why this is important and why we should all be optimistic about more progress and growth in the future of leasing in India. But there are 2-3 issues that I thought I should throw to the panelists here in terms of getting some good responses or strong responses from them. One is, I think, right from the days of the SEZ policy, and many of you, I think, will have good memory of what that meant to the economic growth engine of the country 3-4 decades back. But again, I think all of us will agree in this room that no such initiative to make India a flourishing global hub of any economic activity, whether it's aviation or otherwise, can simply stand on the pillar of tax incentives or benefits alone. I think we all have to accept that as a given. So as much as all of us would like to dwell on tax incentives, tax rebates, tax waivers, extension of sunset clauses, that's not going to drive the business in the long run. I think, firstly, a recognition of that fact is important amongst investors, lessors, as well as, of course, government and regulators. The second most important thing which Mr. Srivastav flagged was aircraft financing. And this is where I think there's been a lot of debate, and rightly so. And we do have a good representation of people here. We have people from banks. We have Mr. Deepesh Shah, who's probably seen the entire cycle of the challenges that financiers have gone through as we've tried hard to provide an alternative to Dublin as the haven for leasing. So I think that's something that I'd like to focus on in terms of getting some responses from panelists here. And again, in the context of the new Aircraft Objects Act now, there is obviously that's a big move forward. But again, notwithstanding that, there continues to be what we call a trust deficit, which again the chairman Saab referred to very briefly. And then I'd like to hear from some of you on how do we bridge that so-called trust deficit as we move forward, because we seem to have done everything else very well. There are lots of deals which have been signed in IFSCA. Mr. Deepesh can talk about it in more detail. There's more happening as we speak. Obviously, we've seen the likes of Air India and Indigo doing their own bit in terms of triggering new transactions on financial leases for their own aircraft, which again is the big driving force for this business going forward. But notwithstanding all that, I think we also need to find new ways of bridging this so-called trust deficit, which I think will continue to challenge us. Lastly, I think the third point I wanted to make is, the infrastructure style policy treatment, while it may not be the be-all and end-all of, building the leasing business in India, is a critical factor. We again have to accept that it can open new doors in terms of, providing more capital for sure. I know banks may have a slightly different view on that, and there are issues around RBI's view on classification of aircraft as preferred assets or priority assets. Some of that is, again, I think, a genuine concern on risk or exposure to bank funds. But I think again, I'd like to state before I start introducing the participants that to me, having spent about 15, 20 years in the sector and watched the developments globally in terms of how this asset has been driving growth, aircraft assets are probably one of the most liquid assets today. And for various known reasons, I don't want to go into the details, we can pick that up as we move through the conversation, but that's something that we have to now take advantage of as India, especially given the large order book that we have. And therefore, on that note, I just wanted to again thank FICCI and the organizers of this wonderful event, Wings India, and then quickly run through the panelists that we have for this interesting session. I'll start with Dr. Dipesh Shah, who is the Executive Director of IFSCA. Then I think we now have Ms. Neelam Agarwal, Director. We had a quick conversation yesterday as we wanted to debate a few issues around what the government is doing again to bring confidence into the sector. We have Mr. Edward. Yes, Mr. Edward Delahai. I hope I've got your name right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
VP and Head of Customer Accounts for Airbus in India. We have Anubhav, a good friend of mine, from Boeing. He's the Head of Strategy and Government Policy. We have Ms. Priya Mehra. Do we have Priya here? Oh, thank you, Ms. Priya. Chief of Governance and Strategic Acquisitions for Akasa Air. Welcome, ma'am. We don't have Mishok. Good, again, I think he's stuck in Dublin. He did send me a message. I don't know if Alok has made it. Alok Anand? Alok is also probably in Dublin. They've prioritized Dublin over Wings. And we can't blame them because obviously they had to choose between one of the two given the clash of dates. I think it's the same as the fate with Mr. Tomar. So he's not here. Ms. Lena Chaco is not here as well. And Walter, of course, I just met Walter. Walter is just next to me on the left. Thank you, Walter. And Mr. Sudhir Rajeshirke. He's here as well, President Aerospace from Jubilant Enpro. Mr. Venkatesh is here. Thank you, Venkatesh, for making it. Mr. Ashok Kumar Sharma, Deputy Managing Director and Chief Credit Officer, State Bank of India. Wonderful to have him here. He has some very, very interesting views. I had some side conversations with him before we started this panel. And my good old friend, Mr. Bharat Jain from KPMG, is a lead partner there of the tax business. I've had the opportunity to work with him on a number of transactions, including work on Gift City in the past during my time in KPMG. Mr. Pankaj Malhotra, Member of Finance. Welcome, sir, from Airports Authority of India. And Mr. Rajarshi Sen, CEO of Alliance Air. Oh, he's also missing. I think he's also stuck in Dublin. Okay, so let me roll this off with maybe the first question to Dr. Dipesh Shah. Given what you've heard from the chairman and some of the thoughts that I've shared as a background to this discussion, can you start off by telling us what are the two biggest achievements from an IFSCA standpoint, notwithstanding all the challenges that you've seen, and all of us know that you've been there right from the beginning. So you can start off by telling us what those two big achievements are, and also maybe set a quick context on what is to come in the next couple of years. Dr. Dipesh.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And at the outset, I must compliment Ministry of Civil Aviation for having this excellent conference right on day one in the morning, where everybody is just settling down in terms of the conference, and you have the bigger issues to handle when we start with. I would say that I think before I just give you 2 points, what has happened since 2019 when I think all credit to the Ministry of Civil Aviation for visualizing that India would need an aircraft leasing ecosystem. They started a project called Rupee Raftar, and to their credit, I think that report was so comprehensive. If you really even read today, it has all the components of what an aircraft leasing ecosystem should look like when the government really wants to make this as a place for people to undertake more and more transactions. But I think that was not coming out in isolation. It was in line with the Government of India's growth projections. And we all know that 2047 and the agenda of the Government of India and probably the only country in India only country in the world which can raise their hand in any room, saying that we will grow more than 6 to 7% for next 25 years. India is one of them. So with this type of growth projected, and the type of the aircraft orders which have already been placed by the Indian Airlines, I was told it is more than some 1,500 aircraft which have been ordered in the Indian ecosystem to be delivered for the next 10 years. We needed an ecosystem, because what we were doing is we were building businesses, but on a platter we were giving that businesses to the smaller centers outside. And probably for us the challenge was that why can't we deliver this ecosystem within India? And with those, I think what all has went, since 2019 the report came out. I think 2020 the Financial Center Authority got set up in April 2020 at GIFT City. And the second authority meeting, and I would like to remind our colleague Piyush Srivastav here, that in the second authority meeting of the IFFC authority, the first recommendation that we made to the government to notify was to notify aircraft as an financial services, aircraft leasing as a financial services. So you can see that there was a coordinated efforts between Ministry of Civil Aviation, between the financial authority coming in. And since then, I don't think we have looked back. What we have happened since 2020 and where we are in 2026. Quickly, I can tell you that two things have really made this possible. One is the whole of government approach in making the aircraft leasing and financing an ecosystem a reality. I think rarely you will find that all the divisions of the government, in terms of what the Ministry of Civil Aviation projected in the report. And I was a part of one of the meeting where virtually you would have, people from revenue, people from finance, people from civil aviation, law ministry, everybody on the same table saying that we really want to make India as a leasing hub. With that type of an approach, I think from 2020 to 2026, we saw enormous interest of players coming in. And we are now sitting at a stage where we have 38 lessors now sitting in GIFT City. We have leased 370 aircrafts. Assets, out of 370, 200 roughly are the aircrafts. Around 89, 90 would be the engines, and around 90 we have the other auxiliary and other related infrastructure which are leased out of GIFT City. Now, probably your question to us would be that, look, out of 370, how many are owned in GIFT City? And whether are you able to finance from GIFT City? Because that's the point on which we all are trying to debate. And believe me, friends, between 2020 and 2026, I am sure Piyush Srivastav will also agree to this. We got so many advices from all over the globe. Everybody comes to us with, a piece of paper saying that this 10 things you need to do. And I think we had a lot of advisors, but we had few people to actually implement on the ground. And I think credit to those 38 who really took a leap of the faith and said, look, I will get this started. And without any financing ecosystem, they jump into this whole ecosystem of leasing aircraft. And this 370 aircraft now, which has been leased out of GIFT City, probably is a testimony that there is financing happening from GIFT. Out of 200 aircraft, almost 75 aircrafts are being owned and leased from GIFT City. You are owning those aircraft and you are leasing from GIFT City, and these are the larger ones which Air India and Indigo both are taking in their plans in terms of the India expansion. So these are all coming into GIFT. Both Air India and Indigo as a leasing arm in GIFT now. And we have also seen 6 banks in GIFT, which is banks like Bank of India. I'm naming Indian banks because I think this always comes up. We need Indian capital, we need Indian financials to come forward. We have Bank of India and Axis Bank, which have now, from GIFT City bank branches, have actually financed aircrafts in their books with the lessor sitting in GIFT. So you can now see that the whole ecosystem of having a transactions from a lessor to a law firm to a financier, probably to an asset manager, they all are sitting in the GIFT City ecosystem now. In fact, we had one event in which the entire value chain of the leasing was absolutely done from GIFT City. There was not a single transaction which moved out of GIFT City for leasing. And that was probably a testimony to government's efforts that, look, we are now into this serious business of aircraft leasing and financing. And apart from 2 Indian banks, there are 4 foreign banks, banks like Qatar National Bank, DBS from Singapore. We also have MUFG, and one more foreign bank. So these are 6 banks which are financing from GIFT City the aircrafts now, and we have total 37 banks in GIFT City. And today, if you really ask me, I think each one is contemplating how can we get into this financing and leasing through the structures which have enabled from the GIFT City now. So we see that even though there are few takeaways which needs to be addressed, but I think broadly, if you really ask us, 90 to 95% of what was required for aircraft leasing and financing ecosystem is in place in GIFT City now, with the support of the Ministry of Civil Aviation and the Department of Economic Affairs and Department of Revenue. And we are now probably asking ourselves that if India has to have this 1,000+ aircraft, why can't an entire ecosystem in GIFT support the whole 1,000 aircraft to be leased from GIFT City? So we are now aiming higher in terms of what can be achieved, because I think all of us would agree that those initial 50, 60 transactions are the toughest, because everybody challenges you. You know, every time when we did something, people challenged us that, look, this cannot be done, this is not clear. Even now we hear that people say that rupee financing could be added into the GIFT City ecosystem. But I think we should all understand that today, whatever is required by the airlines and whatever is required by the lessor, the ecosystem exists in GIFT City now. It is not that we are talking of future, we are talking of present, and we are talking of bigger deals already getting transacted through GIFT City. So my opening remarks on this conference is, we are very confident the way the India is now setting up the whole ecosystem, and probably it is time for a lot of global advisors to come and see for themselves as to how this is really becoming a reality and how can they also participate in this growing ecosystem.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dipesh. I think you probably explained more than what I had asked for, but I think it also prompts me to put in context what has been achieved by IFSCA. You know, we keep saying that we want to beat Ireland at its own game, but sometimes we forget in that argument or discussion that it took them 30+ years to get to where they are. And in that context, I think if you just look at what has been achieved since the setting up of IFSCA, I think it's been substantial and creditable as well, and that wouldn't have been possible without the support of the government. Also, the fact that we are in that sweet spot globally where we are driving the business globally as a leading aviation market, the fastest growing aviation market, and therefore I think we can aspire to achieve a lot more in the next 5 to 10 years. And thanks for setting that context. So I want to use that as a segue to quickly go across to you, Mr. Pankaj. Deepesh spoke a lot about the support from the government and, of course, the commitments that have been made in order to take the business forward. I just want you to quickly focus on 2-3 key elements of policy, also from an AI standpoint in terms of how you're contributing to this and supporting the growth of the sector, sir.
Well, very good morning to all of you. In fact, what I feel is for the lessors and the financiers' perspective, confidence does not merely rest on the contracts which we are entering. Essentially, it is based on the infrastructure certainty as well as the operational predictability which we could have as a sector as such. So here, I think the role of AI comes into as an enabling partner to the country as such, a very crucial role which AI plays. So although AI is neither a lessor nor a financier, but we ensure that as an on-ground partner, we ensure that all the aircraft assets which are properly protected, they are accessible and operatable across their entire life cycle. So even the modern ICAO compliant airports which we are building with various long-term parking and maybe the storage facilities, night parking options, and even the MRO-ready infrastructure which AI is likely to build upon in the next decades. So in that way, AI is directly supporting both the aircraft introduction as well as its deployment, as well as its redelivery. Another key factor, I think, in transforming the India's leading this leasing landscape would be the Cape Town Convention, where AI contributes both at the execution level as well as by facilitating the smooth repossession, deregistration, as well as the ferrying out operations, which gives a lot of comfort to the lessors as well as the financiers in this industry. Obviously, with the close coordination with the DGC and other government authorities. So far as the customs, immigration, and the airport stakeholders are concerned, all have to be taken jointly in a very, very collaborative manner if we want to push forward this agenda. The operational readiness, which I feel is what really converts the treaty commitments, which maybe India as such has given, into real investor confidence. So here, I feel that in order to inculcate more investor confidence, we have to be very serious about in terms of implementing the ICAO convention. Then apart from this, so far as the charges are concerned, the AI needs to be providing the transparent charges, which need to be, the process need to be more predictable and based on a very credible traffic data, as well as supporting for the regional connectivity is also an important factor. AI, so in this way, would like to reduce the risk perception and improve the asset utilization, which this being a very, very capital intensive industry. So the asset utilization, the entire product life cycle is properly utilized is also very important. So in concluding, I would like to say that AI is playing a very critical risk mitigation partner so far as the India's aircraft leasing ecosystem is concerned by providing, supporting even the gift city initiatives, IFSC, strengthening the Cape Town conventions, as well as helping the positioning India as a trusted global aviation hub. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I'm now tempted to move to Anubhav and get his thoughts from a Boeing standpoint. Now, Pankaj sir obviously referred to the ratification of the convention, and now, of course, we have the Aircraft Objects Act as well. So, as Boeing, obviously one of the largest OEMs, which still has a big stake in India as a market, can you tell us what are the 2 or 3 things in the ecosystem you think are important from a progress standpoint, which you think needs to be effectively implemented, and can also build confidence in the system? Because one of the things that I alluded to in the opening remarks is there is still, I think, an issue of trust. We've done a lot of things moving along that journey, but how do you think, as Boeing, we can bring in more trust in enforcing the act, for example, and ensuring that there's more confidence in getting things done smoothly in the future?
Yeah. Thanks, Vasu. As Boeing, we have been involved since the Rupi Raftar times, right? We were involved in giving our recommendations. We used to have something called as Boeing Capital Corporation, which used to be sort of a leasing arm and supporting a lot of lessors. We have done away with that arm. We have Boeing Customer Finance, but as an OEM, we are actively involved with leasing companies and ensuring that our airlines partners get the best, just from a matchmaking perspective. So that's our role in the industry. And I really resonate with what Dipesh was saying, that I've been involved in multiple policy areas. I don't think I've seen a whole of government approach as we have seen in terms of implementation of rulemaking from a gift city perspective. And the pace at which the reforms have taken, I think there have been a good amount of test cases where, reposition of aircraft was also done in a super faster way and all of that. So a lot of good work that has been done, which is where when we hear, about 370 aircrafts being leased, that's really, heartening and great news. But when we go back to the lessors, right, and what we tend to do is when we speak at public forums, we get one sort of a feedback. But when we go in, private conversations, we get slightly different feedback. And that's important for all of us because, for all the good work that has been done, I feel that still there is a lot of headroom for us to grow, and there is a lot of potential. So one important milestone was getting the Cape Town Act ratified by Parliament, which is a big milestone. But when we look at Cape Town, I think it is important from our perspective, from India's perspective, to ensure that the rule making, the detailed rule making that happens in the Cape Town is also in a way aligned with all the global best practices. And there are certain elements that would be important in terms of when lessors look at it, how much sort of a government intervention is going to be there from a Cape Town, even after Cape Town implementation. How much, let's say, how are we going to navigate the IBC regulations when Cape Town gets implemented? So I feel that that is one important element. The other important element, and again, it's important for us to realize that while Gift City is an important and integral part of growth, there is also an element of trust which we need to build in the broader ecosystem that fuels growth of Gift City. And that's really in terms of understanding and possibly treatment of tax, and let's say, the way the tax authorities treat possibly the difference between an operating lease and a finance lease, possibly the structure of how an SPV is structured when a leasing transaction happens. We have seen and we have heard, again, this is more from an airline perspective, about some of the tax notices that continue to go out. There is good and justified reason from the tax authorities, but I feel that there is also a point of view of airlines and the lessors that needs to be heard, because when a leasing transaction happens, and we always keep talking about Ireland, but we have to understand that they have, there is a set international way of operating of leasing transactions. There is a way in which the SPVs are structured. And our understanding of those SPVs should be aligned with, let's say, the broader global regulation. That's really important, because on one side, when we, as Boeing also, we are big advocates of Gift City. When we go and advocate for Gift City, and then the lessors are also facing a lot of tax scrutiny, there might be certain elements which are right, but there is also where they feel that, it's a bit of overreaching and bit of, not clearer understanding between the two sides. Those elements sort of harm the good work that's being done from a Gift City. So I think that is really important. And if there is more and more understanding about leasing structure, operating lease, how finance leases are typically structured, that would go a long way in sort of, building the confidence. So I see that those two measures are really important. And, once Cape Town is done, there used to be a premium on India because of, let's say, the Cape Town ratification, which was not there. I think that premium goes away, affordability increases. Piyush can always say that, despite all of those premium going away, the airfares are not coming down, it's going up. But then this is an industry which operates on a, extremely low margin. I think the objective at this point of time is to ensure that how we can get the maximum inflow of those dollars in the country. And, as Vasu, as you mentioned, it takes 10, 15 years to sort of build that critical mass, and trust building and confidence is, I would say, at the core of the growth which is needed from a Gift City perspective. So those are some of my initial, let's say, observations.
Thank you, Anubhav. I think you've struck at the core of some of these issues, and thanks for enlightening us on the industry view. And of course, when it comes from somebody like you, representing a global community, it has to be taken with seriousness. In fact, I'm inclined to allow some time for Mr. Piyush Srivastav to answer that specific query or concern on tax, but we'll leave it for later, given that we're already running short of time, and I'm getting a bit nervous now to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak. So I want to quickly move to your neighbor, Anubhav, Bharat, who's looked at a lot of these tax issues for a very long time, more than a decade, as I know, if not more, now, particularly in the context of Gift City. So, Bharat, can you quickly add your own thoughts on what Anubhav just said? Primarily from a global best practice standpoint, and you've seen how the transactions have evolved here, what kind of concerns lessors have typically. Also touch upon briefly the regulatory certainty or uncertainty that you have seen being addressed in some form. The legal enforceability, which is again another concern as I see it. And of course, last but not the least, the question of investor confidence, which essentially I think is tied to these two elements. So, but be brief. I know I'm going to push you all to close your remarks quickly now, but we do want some time allowed for question and answers as well. Bharat?
Sure. So prior to that, I think first I must, so when Dipesh Bhai and Piyush ji talked about lot has been done, I have seen this from close quarters.
Yep.
I sit in one of the committee which Gift City had constituted, and I must say that whenever any recommendation has gone, the speed at which Gift Authority work is just unbelievable. So compliment to them. So a lot of heavy lifting has been done in last couple of years. But when I talk to say my clients who are mainly the top foreign lessors based in Dublin, I think one need to understand the aircraft leasing, the taxation as a whole. There are 3 layers of taxation. One, so in the case of a company which is say based in Dublin, first the taxation in Dublin itself. So that company currently pays a 12.5%, but most of this tax is back end. What I mean by back end is initially there will be heavy depreciation which is claimed, because of which there will be losses. And there is a group consolidation or group relief where losses can be passed on to another group company. So essentially whatever taxation comes, that comes at the back end of the aircraft life. Secondly, whenever any dividend which is going from that Dublin entity, if it is with treaty partner or if it is a EU country, then again it is not taxed. The third layer of taxation comes in the source country. In this case, when this leasing company were to say lease this aircraft to India, how India treats that lease rental. And there, Ireland years ago, entered into this treaty with India, whereby, the right to tax that is in Ireland, not in India, as per the treaty. So, and that is why when you look at this from Ireland perspective, it is a very smooth, and that improves the return on investment for the investor. When we look at from Gift City perspective, I would say we are almost there. If you really look at the entire transaction, Gift City entity leasing to say Indian airline, again you have 10-year tax holiday, so no tax there. One leakage is there when the dividend is declared by Gift City entity to investor based across the globe. So that 10% leakage is there, and I think we have had a lot of discussion around it. It is under discussion. So that is it. When I look at this, I think we are almost there, subject to this dividend. Second important thing is, I think when we look at the aircraft leasing taxation, we need to look at it for the entire life of the aircraft. Generally, the life of the aircraft is at 25 years. So while this 10-year tax holiday is amazing thing, because for 10 years you don't pay tax, what happens after those 10 years? Because when investor invest in a capital intensive asset, they want the entire the life cycle to be, there should be tax certainty around that. And that's where I think globally now it is accepted that it will not be tax free, but the tax rate consensus is around 15%. India currently have taxation of 25%. So in a non-tax holiday period, if tax rate could be 15%, I think we'll be aligned to the most of the global aircraft leasing hub. So that's the another important thing. Third thing, Vasu, you touched upon, I think Anubhav validly made that point about tax predictability and certainty. I think that is where the trust is little bit, I think if I may say, when I talk to these lessors, because they are going through, as we speak, they are going through this tax litigation, and pure operating lease has been classified as a finance lease, document, whatever you look at. Secondly, these are the lessors who are amongst top 10, and they have been questioned on the substance. So again, I think when I challenge few of these people, why don't you come to GIFT? Because you move from treaty environment to something which is provided under the Indian Income Tax Act. They say that, if imagine we going to board where we have a existing litigation with India, imagine telling them, setting up the company in India itself, when we are in Ireland, there is a litigation, if we were to come to India. So that's the little challenging thing, and that's where I think Piyush ji initially talked about GAR, and I'll just give you one quick example on that. Currently, if you sell the aircraft, by Gift City entities selling the aircraft, during tax holiday period is exempt from capital gain tax. If it was in Ireland, the way it will happen is 9th year, they will sell it to another group company.
Yep.
So that, another fresh 10-year holiday starts. in India, if you were to do that, I'm 100% sure tax authority will challenge this under GAR, because clearly GAR is that way very wider in reach. And that is where somewhere if something is regulated by gift authority, if there could be some leeway that if it is robustly regulated, if they meet the expenditure criteria, capital criteria, employee criteria, then tax authority should not have that right to challenge the transaction later. I think that will give a lot of certainty and investor confidence.
Some very thought-provoking inputs and points that you've mentioned, Bharat. I don't know, I mean, at some point you're suggesting that if we have to replicate the Irish model, then the government should forget about taxing any business in Gift City for the next 30 or 40 years.
I wouldn't say that, because at the back end in Ireland also there is a 15% tax
Got
today.
it.
So at initial
So 2
few
points,
years-
rationalization of the rates, which is clearly, I think, important, and 2, of course, giving certainty on how the mechanism works so that the life cycle costs are comparable. And today, I think there's some work to do on both elements.
Yeah, so I think the one last point is I think they are okay with some bit of taxation, but that certainty, because then you can build that under your model. These
Got
are
it.
the return I'm getting. Tomorrow those returns should not be,
No, I'm glad people are obviously paying attention to this. You're on the committee as well, and I'm sure Deepesh has more inputs from you. And certainly, I think we will make progress on them. And I want to quickly now move to the other panelists as well. So I do want to come to Neelam ma'am from DOFS, and then I will come to you, sir, as SBI, because I think she has a few points to make as well, based on our discussion yesterday. So I want to ask you, ma'am, from a banking or financing standpoint, and that's an important element of the whole leasing value chain, or rather the financing value chain. From an Indian bank standpoint, I just want you to throw light on, what you think are limiting or preventing greater participation of Indian banks or domestic banks in the aircraft leasing and financing transactions. That's number one. And if you can also quickly cover what kind of policies, signals GOI or other departments want to send to the banks in terms of providing more support. And again, the context is clearly about some of the impending announcements on aircrafts being classified under the harmonized list of infrastructure, which I think will be an important step, while it may not necessarily be a panacea for changing the business environment. But I thought you throwing some light on this will be useful for the audience, and then I'll quickly go across to SBI to get their thoughts as well. Ma'am?
Yeah. Thank you. Good morning to all. I'll try to keep myself as brief as possible, looking at the paucity of time. So, as you rightly mentioned, there has been some So while there has been some encouraging start, as the earlier speakers talked about the Bank of India deal and Axis Bank deal, but then definitely there are various challenges which are especially our domestic banks are facing. It's a mix of you can say regulatory, skill and confidence challenges. Many of the things have been taken care of after this Gift City and IFSC, like the legal risk and the taxation part has been taken care of to a great extent, but still there is a long way to go as far as our domestic banks are concerned. If I can point out a few major ones, and then I'll say that the asset liability mismatch is one of the major constraints, because the aircraft financing typically needs long-term USD financing for at least 10 to 12 years, while most of our domestic banks, including our IFSC banking units, raise foreign currency funds for much shorter periods. So it creates a stress on their balance sheet. So and this prevents the bank in taking that risk of financing, even when the transaction is sound, the credit appetite is there, but there is a restraint from our bank side. That is one thing. Then the conservative internal risk assessment is there to some extent. And if we accept this fact also, the skill gaps. Like the aircraft leasing, as we all know, it's a specialized asset-backed business that requires knowledge of aircraft valuation, lease structuring, maintenance obligations, residual value risk, so many things. But traditionally, in our domestic banks are still building these capabilities. They have traditionally evaluated aviation business as corporate credit rather than asset-backed finance. So there we need to come forward and we need to go a long way. So this skill deficit leads to uncertainty and risk aversion on the bank's part. So these are some of the major issues, and there are capital and regulatory constraints, and of course ecosystem gaps persist when we talk of the global standards, the global models and Indian models. So many of these constraints have been taken care of with all the recent, as Mr. Dipesh mentioned, with the recent few years developments, but still we need to go. So banks will need access to long-term financing solutions, that's what we feel, such as takeout financing and institutional capital, along with capacity building through dedicated aviation finance teams, maybe partnership with global banks and lessors, and shared technical advisory support. So this support will be needed. As far as Government of India policy signal, which you are mentioning, so as I understand, of course, Ministry of Civil Aviation has taken up with the matter regarding this infrastructure finance with Department of Economic Affairs. So that will be, I feel that will be a big signal in this. This will allow the attract infra-focused investors, and this will allow our DFIs also to participate more actively within these within their statutory mandates by providing long tenor funding, refinancing, and maybe partial credit guarantees. This is one thing, partial credit guarantees. This is one option we can explore. Like Government of India, Civil Aviation Ministry, along with Finance Ministry, can explore this idea that where DFI's mandates do not permit direct financing. So government may consider setting up a kind of dedicated aviation or aircraft leasing support fund to provide partial credit guarantees or first loss protection. So this is some of the ideas that are worth exploring in future by the government. And one thing like notification of rules under the PIO Act, as soon as these rules will be, all the rules will be notified, this will be a major confidence booster for our domestic banks. And then the leveraging capital markets, and of course clarity on globally accepted structures. That is one important thing. Clear policy recognition of globally accepted leasing structures, including those bankruptcy remote SPVs, would reduce execution risk and transaction costs. So I guess a mix of these kind of policy initiatives, or at least these ideas, can be explored, and all the stakeholders, I mean various government departments will be included, of course the line ministry, Civil Aviation, Ministry of Finance, and other ministries. So some of these ideas can be explored together, and we can see where we can reach. So this is my initial thoughts on this.
Thank you, ma'am. And I can see there's a long list of aspirational to-dos for the government as well. And I'm sure that, I don't know, Dipesh, between you and Bharat and others in the committee, I think we should have Ms. Neelam also share her thoughts about what can be done from the government side. And I think she's kind of articulated the issues very well from a government's policy standpoint, and I think we should work on that as well. And I want to quickly move to SBI as well. Mr. Ashok, I don't want to say anything except to say, do you want to react to what Neelam ma'am has said? I think she's highlighted a lot of concerns, but I'm sure you found your own solutions to some of them. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Good morning, everyone. So let us do a aircraft funding right now. So you need dollar, a 12-year dollar. My cost of fund for a 12-year dollar versus cost of fund, let's say MUFG, SMBC, is much higher. Am I competitive in a 12-year dollar? The answer is no. ALM issues apart. Maybe I can do 2, 4, 5, 10, but I have to do hundreds, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So how do I do this 100? We do some arithmetic. So if all of us pay in rupee when we travel back to this Hyderabad center, so revenue of most of the airlines, bulk of the revenues are in rupee. So if they borrow in rupee, it makes lot of sense, and they are able to pay off in 12-year full. So suppose you buy an aircraft as an airline company, you take a rupee loan, your revenues are in rupee, you pay off 12-year full, and then their asset is free. As a bank, how do I do? As rightly Madam Neelam pointed out, skill gap, yes, we have. We have funded a couple of aircrafts on balance sheet, as she rightly pointed out. We have also funded assets overseas. We have a lot of branches overseas. So my take would be, as discussing with the IFSC team, we need to probably use IFSC model in a way wherein we enable the rupee funding from there. So whatever my other colleagues regarding the SPV structure, all those has to be sorted out. But unless banks get into this structure wherein they are able to hold the asset on their books, they have the ability to repossess and redeploy, they will not be able to do big deals. Maybe individual deals fine. So we have been talking to a lot of banks wherein couple of deals were tried out, but we are not able to probably enlarge to a size which requires India's need. So my take is yes, this is a demand of the hour that we must do deals. We would start off, maybe we'll sit more with the Gift City team to understand how we can start off with some of the deals, maybe in dollar. But going forward, unless we resolve some of the issues on the regulatory side which prohibits us, we need to find a way to move to rupee to really make this work in a long run. One more thought, I think some thought came out regarding making this industry as the infra. We have seen doesn't really make big difference. So while we fund airports, and airports are viable only when we fund aircrafts, as simple as that. So while it is good to have the particular categorization as infra, but we haven't seen it is making any material difference unless there are some tax breaks linked to is getting categorized infra. But we have seen recent past, most of the time government is declaring whatever incentives they need to declare without looking at whether this is infra or not infra. Stop here. So we are very keen and would probably work more with the Gift City to take it forward. Thank you.
Yeah. I also wanted you to quickly reflect on the other point which keeps coming up as an issue, which is the RBI's view on setting up of subsidiaries. So can you also throw some light on that?
So RBI generally has a framework which says the bank should not own assets on its balance sheet. So the model that can work for us is that we set up another company, maybe in Gift City, which that company should own the asset SPV model that my friend was talking about, and through that we can try both the operating lease as well as financial lease. But without SPV model, without the ability to repossess the aircraft and redeploy, you cannot do large number of deals. Maybe a couple of things for experimentation is fine, but if you want to really catch up 100, 200, that kind of number, you need to have that structure. So RBI doesn't prohibit having SPV, but some issues are around not permitting operating lease. So we need to sort that out, so that I'm not very sure at this point in time whether through Gift City the operating lease is permitted or not. On the mainland it's not permitted. So I'll understand more, maybe the skill gap at our end also. So we'll work on that and probably take it forward.
As SBI certainly influenceable and resolvable.
No, I think, see, everyone within the country understands the need to bring in the domestic funding, because most of the banks we talk to, they say that they derive a lot of comfort even when we are as a small partner. So it makes a lot of sense. I agree.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Now, I've been told that we can continue with this session for some more time, but Mr. Piyush has to leave for the CEO forum. So with your permission, just to make sure that all of you have some more time for questions, I'll probably extend it by another 5 or 7 minutes, if that's okay. So I understand you have to leave, but
So I'll leave
yeah,
the next 3 or 4
sure, thanks. Now, I want to go to Sudhir now, and sorry to keep you waiting for so long, Sudhir. I know you have some very interesting points to make as well. Now, you obviously are looking at it from a completely different product segment in terms of business aviation. And we all know, how big the demand is there as well, especially in a growing India where we're looking at more and more high net worth individuals. I don't want to tell the audience here about how many more people get added to that bracket every year. We all know there are a lot of people wanting to fly their own jets, own their own jets, and lease their own jets, right? And from that perspective, I want you to maybe give us a perspective on what does the business aviation sector look like, especially for choppers and business jets, from a leasing standpoint. And are you seeing any specific concerns about using Gift City again as a leasing hub for these kinds of aircraft, and probably other fixed wing aircraft as well? And do you think we are doing enough to also encourage a portfolio of those assets to be leased out of Gift City? your
Yeah,
thoughts.
absolutely. First of all, thanks, for inviting me. So I represent general aviation and business aviation. If you see the growth of this particular sector, it has grown at a CAGR of approximately 7.5 to 8% consistently since 2021. And the effects of COVID obviously sort of increased the growth, but actually we are way past that. But more importantly, the growth is actually coming from the demand, the real demand for business aviation services. Now, the industry is right now very fragmented. It's seen as fragmented, but there's now a lot of structure which is coming into the industry. There are two main important parts of this industry. Segments, I would say. The first is the business aircraft, which is business jets and turboprops, which are primarily used by large corporates, and of course a lot of charter companies. But there's also a huge sector which is quite organized sector in that sense, which is the helicopter sector. And just last year itself, 35 new as well as pre-owned helicopters got inducted from Jan to December 2025. So that represents a huge demand for the growth of helicopters. Now, one of the key constraints for this particular growth is limited financing that's available to sort of fund this growth. Currently, whether it's a corporate which wants to buy a helicopter or lease a helicopter or a charter company, there are very limited options available, mainly the foreign lenders or the foreign lessors. But also they have like a limited capacity given certain risks. The customers are looking at some of the Indian banks taking that particular leap of faith, and at least I understand that general aviation is a little bit more difficult to understand as compared to commercial aviation, but at least the helicopter segment is easy to understand. The platforms are pretty much stable. The growth in each of those segments is pretty much stable. Oil and gas, charters, religious segments is pretty much stable. The growth is there, the demand is there, the cash flows are pretty much stable. So the users or the operators and the customers are looking at Indian banks to basically finance either in the form of debt or in the form of operating lease out of GIFT City. Now, so there is an inherent demand to that. Uh, we have been interacting with a lot of banks, and the two key, risk fact, or I would say, concerns brought out by the banks, including, like, I spoke with, Mr. Ashok also this morning, is that the first is the evaluation of asset, the aircraft and the asset. Do they understand it? And the asset valuation, the risk associated with the asset, the technical management of the asset over the life of the aircraft. So the asset evaluation is a big challenge. The second one is the risk of repossession. Now, in terms of repossession, do you sell that asset or do you remarket that asset? Now, helicopter fits very well in this particular, I would say, to mitigate these risk factors, the helicopter fits very well because the helicopters can be easily deployed in case of repossession from one operator to another operator in India. The banks understand India as a market much more better than the foreign lenders because they know the Indian conditions. They can price in those risks effectively. So I believe that the initial I would say the gap, that is the asset evaluation gap, can be easily mitigated by having some kind of foreign technical partner or even an Indian technical partner to help banks evaluate the quality of asset and manage that asset over the life cycle of the asset. And the risk of repossession, of course, that's also can be managed in a very structured manner. But I think the Indian banks really need to take a little bit of a leap of faith. And as an organization, I am also part of Business Aircraft Operators Association. As an organization, we are more than happy to work with the banks to fill those key gaps, or the key expertise gaps that currently exist in order to grow this sector in India.
I think.
Thank you, Sudhi. Thank you, sir.
I
Thank
take
you
leave.
so much
Thank
for
you
your
very
time.
much. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's give a round of applause for Mr. Piyush. He is normally a very avid listener and participates in the whole session, but given the conflict, he has to leave. But I'm sure he'll follow up on what needs to be done from a government policy standpoint. We'd like to thank him for having sat through this session for nearly an hour. Now, Sudhir, before I move to your colleague on the right, Mr. Venkatesh, I'm sure he has some points to share on the, regional connectivity part as well and the aircraft in demand there. And a lot of new developments have happened there, as we know, including a big, agreement that was signed yesterday. So I'd like to hear from you, Venkatesh. But Sudhir, also maybe worthwhile to hear from you on, are there a couple of things that you think needs to be addressed immediately in order to, increase confidence in the number of transactions that can be done out of gift? Dipesh is here. I'm sure you have already spoken to him, but maybe for the benefit of the others here, you may want to share a couple of more thoughts or ideas about what could be an immediate priority.
I think from a business aviation perspective, I think we have almost about 38 leasing companies. Many of them actually specially cater to business aviation, Viman being one of them. And I think one of the important thing is capitalization. So Viman also, or some of the other leasing companies are also looking at funding or cost-effective funding to actually, carry out transactions to buy and lease those aircraft to some of the Indian customers. So I think the immediate priority is somehow enable or to offer cost-effective financing to some of these lessors who are actually willing to carry out these transactions at a and are very, very keen to do so.
Thank you, Sudhir. I think that helps, and maybe Dipesh, we can have a separate discussion with Sudhir, with Mr. Ashok as well, to see how we can make that happen. Venkatesh, you've been very patient. It's almost an hour since we started this discussion. Yeah. No, again, you represent a very different entity, but something that has and had an active role in actually assessing this market, building, in a sense, value in the whole ecosystem. So let's hear from you on what you think are the 2 or 3 major developments from a regional connectivity standpoint, and also the role that CSIR plays today from a policy and financing standpoint.
Being a scientist, I look at a different perspective rather than what is the asset class, what is the interest and all. So since our mandate is to design and develop the small and medium sized aircraft, we look at in a different way that how to promote the homegrown technologies. One is that, of course, acquiring the aircraft from by import by the airlines or the FTOs, or acquiring the aircraft from the homegrown technologies. So I was part of this Regional Transport Aircraft Committee of the MOCA long back, but of course it has taken a different turn. So basically, we thought that we should design and develop the regional transport aircraft indigenously. And of course, it's still under the consideration. We hope so we will get it. But right now, I will talk about only the technologies which is right now available, the aircraft technology, indigenously designed, developed, and to be manufactured. So that is the 2-seater aircraft. Right now, what India has got, the indigenous technology. Of course, the 19-seater aircraft and this 90-seater aircraft is still a long way to go. So can we incentivize the homegrown technologies like Hansa NG? We have transferred this technology to the Pioneer Clean Apps, and they are setting up their facility in Kuppam in Andhra Pradesh at a 55-acre facility. So when we comes to the FTOs, the financial strength of the FTOs in the country is very weak. So when our industry partner contacted them for promoting the indigenous trainer aircraft, which is basically for ab initio trainer aircraft, their problem was the financing of the aircraft, because they said that the most of the FTOs in the country financially very weak. So can we incentivize those aircraft? Not necessarily that we are not promoting our aircraft, but any aircraft, basically this small and medium sized aircraft, whoever comes and sets up their manufacturing in the country, can we make these financing policies which is more lucrative and for these FTOs to acquire the homegrown technologies. And finally, the benefits will be transferred to the students, and the burden on the parents will be lessened. This is my view.
Thank you, Venkatesh. And on that subject, I have to go to Walter, because I've just been told he has to be part of the CEO forum as well. Again, my apologies, Walter, but I think we've got a good segue from Venkatesh on training aircraft, which is what TechNam does. And I want you to quickly give an introduction to your business and share a few thoughts before you run away.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
so much. It's a pleasure to be here in the Roundtable again. We participate as Tecnam Italy, Tecnam Aircraft last session, and from there we see the growth here in India. We just wake up today with the good news in the newspaper about the EU and India that signed the big contract that is going to be a game changer. I think congratulations to India, and also not only for the bureaucracy or for the barriers that we have as OEM today to access to different market, to penetrate the market. It's more about also the possibility for us as well at the same time to have a working agreement, parallel agreement with the DGCA. This is important to work together as a unique team, because sometimes for us to build or to certify an airplane is the easy part. The most difficult is to validate in the different countries. For instance, we are in 65 countries today in the world. Going to that session is about the leasing and also financing. We cannot forget about the small airplanes, because the small airplanes is the key, basically, of that business. Because without the pilot, with the shortage of pilot that we have worldwide, with the different statistics that we have from Boeing and also from Airbus, there are a lot of pilots needed in that world. And especially here, when we are talking about 1,500 airplanes to fulfill that important gap. And also, if we are able to get local financing, local leasing, we also will help the new flight school or those entrepreneurs that would like to set up the flight school over here in India, and to stop a little bit to the Indian to go abroad. That is much more expensive. Sometimes, it's difficult to get a visa in some countries, as you can imagine today. And this is the reason I think with the local partner over here is so important. Also from our side, from Tecnam, we are in the business since 1948. We are financing some of our local partners here in India in order to support the growth in aviation, because it's so difficult to get the financing locally. And we're not talking about one airplane, we're talking about 10 airplanes, 20 airplanes, 30 airplanes. But still, though, open the discussion about the reposition of the airplane, deployment of, or to move to another customer in that case. But there are a lot of work to do together. I think those roundtables need to continue. I think what we need is not just a brainstorming, but also from the government as well, or from the ministers, try to have a plan action. So in order to see where we go, because otherwise we will live only in words. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Walter. I must quickly add before Walter leaves that he is the Chief Sales Officer of Tecnam, one of the world's leading manufacturers of certified light aircraft, and he oversees Tecnam's global sales strategy, marketing activities, and also the international partner network. So there's more news, as he pointed out, on the deal, and I'm sure there's a lot more business that Tecnam will do with India. And by the way, I just want you to connect with Venkatesh at some point, because I do see a potential for collaboration there and some joint work. But welcome to India again, Walter, and wish you good luck at the CEO Forum. Thanks for being here. Thank you. Let me just quickly get to the end of this. I know I've left behind a few very important panelists, and I want to now move quickly to Edward. Edward, my apologies again. It's a big panel, and I need to do justice to a lot of people who come from the government, from IFCA, and also the private industry. So I'm going to give you a little more time and I don't have anything specific to ask you except to react to all the views that you've heard around the table. As Airbus, of course, we're very keen to know your view. I know that I went to Boeing first, but that's not because of any bias for Boeing. We know that Airbus is much bigger today in India than Boeing. So we do want to hear from you on what are your thoughts around the leasing ecosystem here. Do you foresee any particular challenges? What's your general view, outlook or view about India in the next 2-3 years? And are we doing the right things as you see it?
Of course. Thank you very much. And first of all, this is a great panel. A lot of very interesting things have been said, and most of it we are fully aligned with and fully support what the development of India has been over the past few years. there's 2 points I would like to make. First of all, I'd like to give you a little bit of context of how we see the Indian market and particularly the financing needs in India for the foreseeable future. And then most importantly is what can we as an OEM, and then talk a little bit more largely than only Airbus, but also Airbus as a key contributor to it, do to support the development of the Indian financing ecosystem, because that is key. The growth in this market is here, and as my colleague panelist mentioned at the very beginning, the growth is here, the order book is here, the orders, whether they're from Airbus or the other manufacturers, are coming in. And that stream will only survive if, of course, there is financing that comes with it, and that ensures that the aircraft are delivered on time and can be delivered. Just by way of context, Airbus delivered last year 63 aircraft to India, and that number is going to grow. We anticipate that over the next 10 years, only for Airbus delivery, so this is for the contracted backlog, we will need $100 billion in financing only for India over the next 10 years. Add to that the other order books, you can see that there is a huge need for financing. So the subject that this conference today is addressing here is absolutely critical to the future of Indian aviation. We expect that over the next 10 years, the global demand will be for more than 2,200 aircraft, so you can see that this is really fundamental to air transport in India. Now I'd like to quickly come to what is it that we do as an aircraft manufacturer to support the development, and I'll look at it on two angles. First of all, what do we do worldwide, and then what do we do specifically for India? We have a customer finance department in Airbus who basically helps developing airlines with their financing, but also takes initiatives. The key initiative that we're taking worldwide is to increase the partnerships with the ECAs and private insurance structures. The reason we're doing that is to diversify the sources of financing. As you know, today, when we look at about a bit more than 50% of our financing are off balance sheet through the lessors, and a little bit less than 50% are on balance sheet. That proportion is slightly changing, and in order to basically secure the financing and to diversify our financings, we're looking for new partnerships. When looking specifically at India, and one of the panelists actually mentioned, I think already on the sidelines, we are working closely with banks out of the Middle East to finance more and more aircraft in India. Last year, 18% of our deliveries to India were financed by Middle Eastern banks. So you can see that there's a growing appetite from banks in the Middle East to do business in India. And all of that is, of course, a very encouraging sign. One of the panelists also mentioned the skill deficit. I think actually it's my esteemed colleague next to me. And that is very important because we are working on this. Airbus has every year, and again in February we'll organize the Aircraft Financier Forum that we are organizing in India, in Mumbai, specifically for Indian banks. The objective of that forum is to share knowledge, is to discuss, and basically to help Indian banks to understand how Airbus finances aircraft, how the financing world functions, and basically encourage Indian banks to develop their aircraft financing capability. And that is an important driver to securing that financing capability going forward. And I think that's really where we as an OEM can make the difference, because we bring our international knowledge, we bring our perspective that we see in other countries, how we can help India develop that. And of course, this goes hand in hand with what India is already doing in Gift City. And I think the two together are really the key to a successful financing ecosystem in India for the years to come, because it's absolutely necessary, and I'm sure it's going to be very successful. So these were my two perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. I wish I'd brought you in earlier. It's certainly very useful to know about the order books for Airbus. And can I also ask you how many aircraft you think will come this year, delivered?
I can't really give you the exact number, but it will be more than what we delivered last year, because the trend is not just on the order book, but of course our global production is increasing every year, but also for specifically for India. Just to give you a feel, today we are delivering about last year we delivered about 7% of our production to India, and that number is set to double in the years to come. So the volume will increase.
So there's hope for Indian flyers that the fares would come down and capacity would not be an issue.
capacity won't be an issue. I cannot comment on the fares.
No, but I think two important points, and I think obviously Deepesh wants to react, but he did mention, Edward, that there are Middle Eastern banks operating out of IFSA as well. So there is obviously a scope to increase the number of deals, as I see it. Deepesh?
I just wanted to add that we have few French banks like BNP Paribas and Natixis and Credit Agricole now in the part of the ecosystem in GIFT, and they've been doing the aircraft financing from their several offshore branches. So while you are working with the Indian customers and you are working with the larger ecosystem, if you can also work with the French banks that through GIFT City, they can also look at this assets because they work with you globally, and I'm sure they will find it more comfort when you talk to them about the requirements of financing for the airlines.
Of course, absolutely. We obviously have excellent relationships, and the French banks have traditionally been our closest partners from the very beginning of Airbus. So you're absolutely right, and I just wanted to clarify when I was talking about the Middle Eastern, is just to add to the whole suite of banks that we're already working with.
Well, I think that's very interesting to hear, and we obviously look forward to more good news between you, Airbus, and a couple of banks, as we move along this year. And hopefully we will have one more opportunity to discuss what has happened since this panel. So again, I have to apologize to my last panelist, which is Ms. Priya from Akasha Air. I don't know how I left her out. I think we got a little too embroiled in the discussions with the regulators earlier on. But she's obviously a very, very important client for all of us in this room and outside as well. We generally tend to get biased by what happens in Air India and Indigo, conveniently forgetting what Akasha has been doing quietly and very well, I must say. And we've heard a lot of good things from their CEO, Vinay Dubey, as many of you may have witnessed in the recent past. But I'd like to leave the last word with you, Priya. And hopefully you will keep the audience entertained for 5 more minutes, after which I can throw it open for questions. I hope I have not left anybody else behind as a panelist, at least not from my list. Okay, Priya, over to you.
Thank you. Actually, it's interesting to be last because, just hearing all the perspectives and actually being the ones who actually need the services of financing. I think the one point that I wanted to make in the overall discussions that we had, of course, in terms of the aircraft growth that the country is going to see is going to be immense. There are large order books, as we know, in the future. So one thing that we always also need to keep in mind from a lessor perspective is that while, of course, we are opening up, a GIFT City, I think it's great for us. It gives a lot more confidence in the leasing world. But the India concentration from a lessor perspective also will become an issue as time goes by. There is only that much of a portfolio that a lessor wants to invest in a particular country. So the alternate means of funding will definitely need to be also looked at in parallel. I think having the banks, the regulations tweaked up for that in parallel, or doing some of those deals through GIFT City where there's more access to capital than just through leasing is something we'll need to definitely also look at. With just in terms of because there's enough and more interaction that we have, and I actually do spend a lot of time with the lessors, is one thing is that we need to definitely keep in the next few years ahead of us with just the number of aircraft we need to finance between the 3 airlines and 4 airlines that we have here. But being small, I can just say that we know we have a long order book in front of us. Concentration is going to become an issue that we need to think about in terms of always thinking of alternate means of financing. But I think the general trend towards India, the general focus on wanting to do deals with Indian airlines from a lesser perspective is definitely far more positive today than what it has been in the last many years. So I think GIFT City has been a big advantage in conversations for us. So thank you for that. And I think if we have some of these grow in parallel, I think we'll definitely be a very successful jurisdiction to keep the engagement with the lessors.
Thank you, Priya. I'd like to also quickly ask you, is there, of course, any real intention of doing more transactions in this year? I mean, I know there's a lot
For
of planes
us?
getting delivered, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was meant to be at Dublin because that's where, as you would imagine, we get a lot of the meetings going. But we have many aircraft to finance in the next year, so many for this year.
I'm glad you chose to be here. It
Yes.
shows that
We have, we
you clearly
divided
are
our
interested
roles.
to get something done
Absolutely.
here.
Absolutely.
And maybe it's a good idea, and I know Edward must be wanting to hear this from you as you grow, that maybe you will place more orders with Airbus as well in the future.
Yeah, Edward and we keep in touch all the time. We're all very good friends, so
So
for sure.
thank you, Priya, and thanks to each of the panelists. I know some of them had to leave, and I hope the audience were able to get some good and interesting perspectives across the board from, as you can see, policymakers, regulators, banks, airlines, OEMs. They're all here in this room, and I'm sure you will find time over the next couple of days to interact with them. But I do want to check with the organizers. Do we have 5 minutes for Q&A? Or maybe I'll just take the initiative and if you can just mention your name briefly, organization, and then one question, please, because I want to go around as well.
I am Murthy Chitturi. I am currently General Secretary of AP Star Hotels Association, and we are into hospitality and pharmaceuticals and planning to start an FTO. So I saw that. I mean, I'm sure the rules which apply for big aircraft and small aircraft will be the same. But when you look at small aircraft, the transaction size being small, I think it's generally more difficult to get money. So is there a mechanism, and also we would not want to borrow in dollars. So how does small aircraft financing work? If maybe someone from SBI and Neelam ma'am can throw in some light on this, or anyone else, and how to make that possible.
I'll go to the banker first. Ashok.
So we have funded a couple of these small aircrafts on the couple of large corporations who have been using, but you come with a business model which is supplying the as a service to the other players. We can have a look at the business model, and if there is a stability of cash flow, it should be workable.
Sure. Neelam ma'am, you want to say something? Yes. Amit.
Hi.
Please
My name
introduce
is
yourself.
Amit Mittal, and I've been an aviation banker with Bank of Baroda. Mr. Sharma knows me, and my observation is that since I've dealt very closely with leasing financing, is as Priya was saying and Mr. Sharma was saying, one is the rupee financing. Although Gift City is a very good initiative, and there are 38 leasing companies, I've myself been the CEO of Maudair, and what my observation is that India being a BBB rated sovereign country, the cost of funding is certain thing which any Indian bank or a foreign bank has to look at when they do the lease pricing. And when we talk about rupee-based financing and so much of order book coming up next 5-7 years with more than 1,000 aircraft, this is one thing which needs to be looked at. And how will that gel with the Gift City initiative? Whether it contradicts that or does it act like a additional thing? Second part is what Priya pointed out was concentration risk. And that is a very valid point, because when leasing companies, foreign leasing companies, look at India as a jurisdiction, they would not like to put too many aircraft in the same country. So these are two things we need to look at.
Good points. Again, Ashok, you want to react?
So India as a country is looking in a big way in funding in rupee, let us say defense exports, for example. We're also looking at funding to developing economies in rupee. So this is already on the table. We probably need to fix up the regulations, other issues. And as you rightly said, that rupee, particularly for the Indian corporates whose bulk of their revenues are rupee, it makes huge sense.
But if I
Dipesh,
just add that, when we started the 2019 report, it talks of rupee raftar. So rupee was obviously, the starting point. But what we realized in the journey was that because the manufacturer, both are outside of India, and when they supply the aircraft, they are charging in, not in rupees, they are charging in foreign currency. That's why the funding has to be in foreign currency. So unless both of them decide to manufacture here and give you a rupee aircraft, I think that whole ecosystem of rupee can be easily developed. But somewhere, I think because the final funding has to go outside, it will always remain in foreign currency for some time. Apart from that, I think RBI do allow from GIFT City an ECB rupee financing. So you can have an ECB in GIFT City and it can be funded in India in Indian rupees. So that is already quite a banks have already done in rupee ECB financing from GIFT City. But as we said, we can work with the SBI to figure out what could be the larger requirements.
Anybody else who has a question? On the concentration risk, Amit, I think Priya has left, but I think her point is valid, but again, I think we'll have to look at the scale of transactions, right? So if you look at Ireland, it's many orders of magnitude to the volume of transactions that have been done in India. So there's, I think, enough and more scope for us to at least do a few $1 billion here before we start worrying about concentration risk. And I'm sure Edward will agree, but we'll reserve that for later. Yeah.
So by way of introduction, my name is Ajay Kumar. I am managing partner at the law firm named KLA Legal. I have the privilege of being on the panel of Project Rupee Raftar, work closely with Dipesh Bhai. And we very regularly advise aircraft lessors and financiers and airlines as well. I think I heard one comment here made by a Airport Authority of India that certain further reforms are required, including fully implementation of Cape Town Convention. So while the Cape Town Convention Act has been passed, the rules are yet to be notified. If that can be done, quickly, then it will definitely be helpful for the entire ecosystem. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm taking that more as an input. Well noted, but I've been told that we should conclude the session now. Thank you to all who've remained in this room patiently. I can see a lot of faces still in the room. And thank you to all the panelists once more for taking time off and being part of this. I really enjoyed moderating the session, and we look forward to seeing you all outside this room over coffee and drinks. Thank you.